There are few opportunities for us to go out and film outside to show you new products. And in this case, it could be two things, either the Tesla I have behind me, or these two stabilizers I have in my hand, and it's more likely to be about these. I'm going to show you two stabilizers from the original equipment manufacturer brand that they sent us so we can show them to you. They are two very similar stabilizers, the Isteady X3 and the X3. As I said, they are two very similar stabilizers with some small differences, and both are very affordable. And we're going to test them live here with this Tesla Model 3. So you can see what kind of setup we can get by combining one of these two stabilizers with an iPhone 15 Pro Max. Before we start the practical tests, I'll give you some background and discuss their features. As mentioned, these two stabilizers are quite similar. We'll talk about the differences between the two later, but first let's talk about what they have in common. A stabilizer for all kinds of phones. They will auto-adjust, so they'll work for anything from an iPhone 12 mini, for example, to an iPhone 15 Pro Max. They'll work for any type of mobile device. They're two stabilizers that offer 3 axes, full stabilization 3 axes. Like, for example, the one you might have seen me use at home to record YouTube videos, a 3-axis stabilizer. What it allows us to do is, well, rotate the phone vertically, horizontally, and also spin it around itself. What's obvious is that our mobile device will go in this central part. It's adjusted with a spring and stays really firm. It doesn't move at all. What will set this gimbal apart from others? First of all, since it's for mobile, it's a very small gimbal, as I mentioned. And then, for example, it could have competitors like the DJI Mobile, the one used to hold the phone. However, this one is going to be much more complete. This one, to begin with, brings us a device here in the center, which is a remote control that we can use both from here and to move the gimbal manually. To change the modes, for example, among which we can lock the axes, or for instance, we can put it on a tripod and then set it up. We can set the modes ourselves as a remote control. This remote control doesn't use batteries or anything at all. It charges and works when we connect it directly to the gimbal, and we can remove it and it will work up to 10 meters away. Then we have other buttons, for example on the back, which we can use to double tap or triple tap and reset the center of the stabilizer again. Or also, if we triple tap it, it will allow the phone to rotate 180 degrees to point at ourselves and, for example, record ourselves. Lastly, I should mention that we won't have any issues with the size of the device, but the weight is limited to 300 grams. But I'm telling you, an iPhone 15 Pro Max can weigh around 240 grams, so this won't be a problem. And now let's see. The differences between these two stabilizers are actually very few, okay? I mean, it's very simple. Simply, it comes with a removable tripod, a tripod that you can attach with the screw, which would be, for example, to place it on a static base. Well, in this one, you have to screw it in and attach it externally. As you can see, from here we can pull out 3 little legs, so if we want to set it on a table, record a more stable shot, or whatever we need. But this tripod is removable, and that's where the differences of this little one, the special edition, end. So what does the regular removable X3 have? Well, it has the tripod integrated. We have the option to pull out the legs, which are metallic and integrated into the body itself, and then we have a tripod right here. But possibly the biggest difference isn't that. The biggest difference is that we have a magnetic light that works with the stabilizer's own battery and that we can attach to the side of the mobile device. What is it for? Well, it's a light that has 10 brightness levels, which we can control with a dial on the left side of the device. And it also has 3 warmth levels. We're going to have a warm light, an intermediate light, and a cool light so we can light up the scenes. For example, if we're in a dark place and want to do an interview, like the typical interviews done on the street, we could do it without any problem. We set it with a very soft light so it's barely noticeable, but we get a much brighter shot. This is really helpful for phones, since usually the sensors in phones are pretty bad in low light situations. Finally, how many hours of use are we going to get with these gimbals? Well, we're going to get 11 hours of use. Of course, if we set the light to maximum on the XE, it will probably last a little less, because that's an extra power drain. But like I said, 11 hours. I haven't been recording that long, and when I needed to, I just plugged it in. We have a standard USB-C port for charging, so that's not gonna be a problem. The battery, long before the gimbal's battery runs out, your phone's battery will die, even, as I said, with an iPhone 15 Pro Max. But we've come out to this closed road to test them. I'm going to set up my iPhone 15 Pro Max. It would be the same with the X3, right? Yeah, but just so you can see one of the two, I'm gonna try it on the X3. And we're going to shoot some footage of this Tesla Model 3 with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Like I said, the operation is exactly the same. They stabilize exactly the same. The possibilities are exactly the same. I've already told you the only difference, the tripod and the LED bulb, which in this case I'm not going to use because we have enough light. So before you go on to see how I shoot the footage and what the final result is, let me explain that once we turn on the gimbal, we're going to have a lot of options. I recommend that you watch the first use tutorials offered by original equipment manufacturer, which are available on their website. When you open the product box, they show you how to use it for the first time, how to set it up, and so on. However, it's very simple. We just turn it on, place the phone, and we're gonna have several, so to speak, modes. These will allow us, for example, to lock the horizontal axis, the vertical axis, and the panning axis. Well, this depends on our preferences and the shot we're going to record. There's another one that, for example, allows us to record in 360 degrees. And if we move the gimbal down, up, left, right, or around ourselves, it will follow us at all times. Of course, all the movements will be stabilized, which is the main feature of this device, making the videos super stable. And if you want the gimbal to follow you automatically with what's called tracking, you will be able to download the mobile app which connects to the gimbal and recognizes you so that if you move, the gimbal will follow you. Also, we have gesture detection, manual user mode, and a lot of possibilities with that mobile app. But nevertheless, you shouldn't lose sight of the fact that in the end, you can innovate as much as you want, but the most important thing is that a gimbal is used to stabilize your images. So here I leave all the creativity in the world up to you. I usually like to record cars, so that's what I've been able to show you with. And now, what uses is this type of gimbal going to be good for? Well, for example, it can be used to record our vacations. From setting it up and using it as a tripod somewhere to take a photo or a time lapse, for example. Or later, what I'm gonna do, for example, a product video, a video with my phone of this Tesla Model 3 to publish later. And it's very important that, for posting on social media, we have the option to record both vertically and horizontally. These original equipment manufacturer gimbals, the X3 and X3S, have that feature. They allow you to record both vertically and horizontally. And with that said, let's stop with the technical part and let's try recording this Tesla Model 3 with the iPhone. Let's place the phone, and it's very simple. We just set up the stabilizer so that we can read the original equipment manufacturer brand on this part. And now we insert the phone, being careful not to press any buttons so that, well, nothing gets pressed during the recording. And finally, I had forgotten one detail. The X3 compared to the XE version has an extendable handle on the stabilizer itself, which will give us some distance if we want, for example, to record ourselves and have a slightly wider shot. Just a detail that was also important in contrast to the SA version. Thank you for watching the...
Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the channel.
This is an example of vertical recording. I'm gonna walk, and as you can see, I have the light on so that, well, it lights up my face a little more. I'm turning it off now. Let's see if you notice. Since I'm outside, I doubt you'll see any difference. Now I'm turning it back on. Can you see it reflected in my glasses? However, what you can see is that you don't notice anything at all. I'm walking because the stabilization it provides is really very good. Let me show you one last use case. Imagine that I want to record a panning shot of the car right now. Well, I can just put the stabilizer there and leave it still. And with this remote control I was telling you about earlier, we'll have the ability to start recording. And as you'll see, I'm going to move the phone directly from this controller. As you can see, I'm moving it to the left and to the right to pan over the car. In the same way, I could also move it up or down, or even start recording from this button here after connecting it to the phone via Bluetooth. As you can see, this is the joystick, this is the button to change the recording modes, and as I was saying, to lock some of the axes. Or if we press it twice, it will allow us to put the phone in a vertical position. Also, I don't like to use digital zoom. If you want to zoom in, you have this button, for example, to increase the zoom, and this one to decrease it. Also here, it will show us the battery status and other information. A remote control that, as you can see, is really complete. How does the lighting work? Well, as I told you, we have a little wheel here on this side, which, well, you can see right there. Orange, which if we press it, will turn on that little light. Then, if we turn the little wheel up, we'll increase the brightness of the bulb. If we turn it down, obviously we lower the brightness. And if we give it short taps, we'll change the tone of this light. I don't know if you can see it, but it switches between more orange and more blue, changing the color temperature of this light. Finally, and to wrap up the video, how much does each of these stabilizers cost? And is it worth upgrading to the X3 compared to... Well, the X3 Special Edition version is priced at €89, which is the official price. There might be some discounts available when this video is published, so I recommend you check the video description because we'll leave the purchase link and more information about the product there, in case we find a better price. Then, the X3 version, the regular version, will cost €129. Is it worth buying the regular version? Well, if you are bloggers, auto bloggers so to speak, it will be useful for you. It will be very useful. That it's much smaller, that it already has this tripod built in, and especially that it has the light, which will give you much more illumination. For recording interviews, for recording yourselves indoors, in dark scenes. And then we'll have the last difference I mentioned before, the extendable handle, so you can, for example, get a wider shot of yourselves. However, if you don't need any of this, if you're always going to record outdoors, if you're going to record, for example, products like this Tesla, the X3 would be more than enough because in the end, as I said, it will give you the same results. The stabilization is exactly the same. So with that said, I'm wrapping up the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.